just say testing or something.
Testing. Is the sound all right? If we talk in a normal voice, can you hear anything at all?
What is it?
Oh, the question was asked how far we remember our ancestors back into ancient history. The earliest recollection I have is great-grandfather Shachel, who I remember sitting at the table with the talis on and davening more or less incessantly. He didn't say anything that I remember ever. He just studied the Talmud, and then the family gathered around him, and his long white beard, and for certain occasions, I don't know whether it was birthdays or otherwise, or high religious holidays, I was elected to recite some poems, which already in these early stages of my life filled me with utter panic and terror. And of course, during one recital, I got stuck right in the middle of it, and everybody was very upset about it, including me. And that's about it. I remember a small room, and the Shachel family predominantly gathered around. That's about all I remember about the great patriarch Shachel. Do you have anything?
The only thing I dimly remember is Pesach, that it was the big holiday,
right.
And we all arrived, and I was very little, 3 or 4 years old, and there was this big table, almost like at the Weissgals, with many, not just one table, but maybe with, I don't know, and he was at the end, and you were not asked to do the Manishtami.
I don't think so.
I wasn't. I'm glad.
No, I remember the table and the wine glasses, I think, and that's about all I remember. And then, of course, Tante Emma, his, I don't know, the complicated family relationships, his second wife, was it?
Was she? Really? Emma?
I think so. Tremendously fat, big, and very nice, always. And you remember the little masseurs with the mustache? And, no? Was it, no, it was Ida, of course. It was, when father got these terrible headaches, she massaged his eyes and so forth, the migraine headache. And you don't remember her? She was about 4 feet tall and also very nice. Of course, they all, the whole Green family was extremely.
But that was not Green, although there were.
Somehow.
That was on mother's side. Everything on mother's side. Grandmother's father, Shachel. She was geboren Jenny Shachel, Grossi. Well,
but the memories otherwise are very dim. And then father's father, I have one glimpse of him sitting in father's chair in the bureau, and I toddling in the office, and I toddling up to him somehow, and I think he patted me on the head or something like that. That's about it.
He died when I was 2, I think. So he was 6.
Yeah. So.
Well, more.
What did he do?
He founded Adolf Kaufman und Sohn, which was the wool firm that father ran until we emigrated.
He kept running it under
import-export. He would import wool from, actually it was Australian wool mainly, but by way of France and where else. He had big connections in France, and he would sell it to the Balkan countries and to, well, you were in the business, so you practically ran it.
I remember one slightly funny anecdote with, there was he had a connection with the Middle East or something, and this little guy came in, and he was tragically, he was almost totally blind, but he made deals. He was the middleman, agent, and his German was very peculiar, very Jewish and so on. And he said, we have these mohair or whatever, or wool, but there was this viel Samt drin. And I thought Samt means velvet. And I thought, how can velvet be in wool? And he kept talking about that Samt, and therefore the price would go down, up, and so on and so forth. Until I finally thought he meant Samt. Samt, which of course was dead weight, and so a bale of 200 kilos, I think, that's the way they ran, the big ones, instead of having mostly good merchandise, had a lot of junk in there. So that was Samt. I was totally stumped.
Yeah. Now, in the office there were two people with father, the bookkeeper, Garant, and the magaziner, the man who did the heavy work of loaded the bales off and on, and there was a storage magazine behind when you came in into a general, what do you call it, driveway, and to the right was the door to the outer part of the office, and you turned right again and you were in the main office where father would sit at one desk and the bookkeeper across from him at the other desk. But outside in the outer office would be the Franz, who was a lovely guy, very down-to-earth, powerful, shortish, strong man.
Always smoking a pipe.
Smoking a pipe, and who would do all the dirty jobs and all the heavy labor. And when I broke my leg on New Year's Eve when I was about 7 or 8, ice skating, and then recovered, but still had difficulty walking, he was assigned the job of walking with me to school.
Yeah.
Every morning, and picking me up, and we got very good friends because he was a socialist and I always had socialist leanings. That's not to go to the CIA or FBI, please. So he was for the common man, but always nice, sort of human. You know?
Oh yeah, it was, and in fact, we talk about the magazine. The warehouse back there is one, and Michael said something about the Anschluss and the Nazis. There's one thing I remember when it was already in the dangerous stages. Two Nazis, not in uniform, but plainclothesmen Nazis came into the office and told my father, well, this was it, and everything back, all the raw material were requisitioned, the whole business was gone and so on. Father started pleading with them, and they shook their heads, and finally he said, well, does it serve your purpose any if I kill myself? And he opened the drawer and he says, here's my revolver. I'm going to shoot myself. So does that help you any? And at that point, apparently, he was able to convince them. And they relented, and they said, all right, we'll give you 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, and by that time, then we were already in the process of immigration, of course. So the 3 weeks, that was shortly before we got out.
It was a 5 months period. Hitler took over in March of '38. Harry and I left in August, and the parents a month later in September. So between August and September, everything was liquidated. We left with very little of belongings, and they managed to still even buy some glass objects and from other things that might have some value. And mother sold the furniture, which was sort of, she considered hers, I think, or father gave it to her, and father made arrangements for some money to be transferred to Panama because we were each allowed only $6 on immigration.
$6?
Yeah.
That was it. of his total
Oh, yeah.
fortune with which we arrived in Panama each.
But getting back one moment, the founder of Adolf Kaufman
Yeah, that was
grandfather. Now, was he the wealthy one that?
Yes,
Yeah.
he became what was called a Gulden Millionaire. Gulden was the currency before the World War, a very strong Austrian currency.
Yeah.
And he was a millionaire, and he lost most of it because it was all invested in the equivalent of war bonds in the First World War. So in 1918, when that ended, they weren't worth very much. So it was a business.
The real estate was passed on to father. That's how he got the houses.
2/3 mainly, because
because
Uncle Richard got 1/3 usually, because he was not married and had no families. There were 4 houses in Vienna.
On mother's side, there was. Have you mentioned her? There was Grossi and.
Well, that Schachel Grossi, the major part of the family was always on mother's side. She
Yeah.
had lots of family there. The Grüns, the Hirschfeld, whomever you know, is all mother's side. The only exception being, isn't it true that Eric actually is dimly on father's side? Willems? No, there's also mother's. The Willems.
Yeah. Because it was a very complicated family, which the relationship through certain a sister somewhere married the same.
No,
one sister died, and the other sister married the. And
that was Green.
Yeah,
I mean,
then it became.
Green.
It became very complicated because one person was simultaneously, the old joke could be that her own aunt or niece or something like that. I could never keep it.
What was his name? We still knew him, of course, Green, we knew only the second marriage, which was the young ones, the top one. The old ones were Edmund Ernst and what's her name, the fat one who died since the old sister, not Sophie and not Annie.
Hugo? Wasn't fat.
No. Uncle.
I mean, there was
Hugo only married Mitzi.
Oh, the fat woman.
Yeah. And the 3 older ones were by his first wife, and then she died, and he married her sister. And the 3 younger ones, Sophie, Max, and I think Ernst, I don't know where the dividing line went through, but from the younger.
Yeah.
And they came to New York because they had affidavits through some relatives or something. They were already in New York when I went the first time in 40. They met me. There's Fritz Roth, who was married to Sophie. Still is. Yeah.
Did Michael ever know father?
No, he was born about a year and a half after he died.
That's right.
Oh, really?
Father died in January 51, and we were married in November just before that.
No, couldn't.
Yeah.
Didn't get married.
November 50. Oh, no, wait a minute.
51.
No, he didn't die then he died in 52.
Yeah, because
He was
we
about
got
66.
married in January 51, so we were married about a year.
Well, why don't I take Michael to the...
No, James.
James. Oh, James?
Why don't you continue? I'll say goodbye to you off camera or on camera.
All right, make it on camera. What's that?
All right. See you, Uncle Harry.
Okay, sorry about the timing.
Yeah. See you back.
Yeah.
See you soon.
See you soon. Have a good trip.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye. Watch the plug.
Thanks for the dinner.
Are you getting cold? You're kind of catching a cold.
No, it's all right.
Why don't you talk? Just die Stimme. Well, I mean, the earlier vignettes about either about Atzi or about vacations or about
Do you remember?
vast amount of.
Well, sure. Do you remember father's bout with cancer?
No, sure.
Yeah.
But he was
So he pleaded with Franz to bring him bring him the revolver so that he could shoot himself, and then the hospital said,
We're just gonna keep it this way.
Okay, you see it now on the monitor? And all's going
you see
well.
my shivering?
Are you cold?
Oh, we're freezing, we're dying probably. But that's what it's for, you know. And after they said that, they both keeled over. And,
You lost one of your eyes.
oh,
Well, I remember the armored cars on the Praterstrasse and driving by in triumph, and the pedestrians eyeing us and saying, well, we'll show you. We'll get you out of here. And then we were preparing for immigration, and we had the Spanish teacher, Bobby Weiser,
yeah.
and he had a very cool and realistic approach. And when we used to say, "Did you hear this?" Now there were two motorcycles with the sidecars going side by side, and in between they had these couple of Jews with a long beard trapped, and they just kept on riding until they collapsed and so forth. And Bobby Weiser's standard answer was, yeah, you'll find out that the Nazis are anti-Semites. Of course, you were prepared for these things, so these were not really great news. It was mild news, and I myself played it pretty dangerously. First, I had the Stalin's biography on my night table in those days, which would be instant death, of course, if it had ever been found. Secondly, I was asked to scrub the previously painted. You scrubbed too?
Yeah, sure. We were caught together. We were walking in the Innere Stadt somewhere.
So we scrubbed, and there was a...
Well, you have to explain, there was the...
Yeah, they were painted them on before, the night before. Yeah, and then they rounded up the Jews to scrub the sidewalks. And there was a rather timid-looking German soldier there. Do you remember that?
No.
He was somehow the guard, one of the guards to supervise this whole procedure. And I was very defiant and, of course, stupid, not realizing the dangers there were. And after my assignment was finished, I stood up and asked him, did you have that much fun in Germany too? Which could also have been instant death, of course. Next concentration camp, but I didn't think about it that much. And he was rather very human, and he was very embarrassed, and he didn't like the scene, apparently. And he turned away. He was not in a Nazi uniform. He was in a military uniform. And he didn't give me any answer or anything. He just turned away. And people were all sorts of expressions on their faces. What crazy thing this guy's doing. And another thing was the knocking on our door. You remember that incident when we were huddled in the apartment, and there was the knocking on the door, and we didn't make a sound. Because if we had opened the door, it may have meant Dachau or whatever. So we didn't make a sound, and they went away, fortunately.
There was one that I remember where Father had had this broken leg before, the summer before, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
When we were in Canton. And I wasn't home, but there was somebody came, and he went with a cane and limping badly and or something during the Nazis, and they didn't do anything. You remember that?
I heard about it. I don't remember.
I wasn't there either. Yeah.
So
I remember when I went on my subscription thing through school or university, and I had a Lohengrin Vienna Opera performance, and it was shortly after the Nazis took over, a few days. I decided, it's a fine performance. I had this seat up there, went up and sat down, and the first thing, the conductor comes in, orchestra starts and plays the whatever.
First lesson?
One of the anthem, and of course everybody gets up and gives the Hitler salute like this. And I got up and stood there without the salute, looking around, thinking, oi, what happens next? But luckily, again, nothing happened. But I decided that sounded or looked too unhealthy, and I wouldn't do it again. And that was the end of that.
Because Uncle Richard never believed, he always said, well, somebody who didn't do anything wrong and was a nice guy, nothing would happen to him until he came home one night or was brought home, beaten up
badly, or bruised.
Or bruised up on a bridge, or so they called him, and they the hell out of him. So then I also remember, he was of course the violin teacher and professor, and they painted all sorts of signs on the windows, and one day they wiped them off, and he said, and he took this little cushion that the violinist had, and he threw it down in jubilation, and he said, President Roosevelt just said he was going to retaliate for all these things, and now you'll see, everything will be all right. And he was so optimistic about it. Didn't help too much. And then we went to
in August, and actually it was the first time that we went physically through Germany. The train went through Germany and into France in '38. Well, it was an uneventful trip through Germany. And arranged to be with Atzi for about 10 days.
Yeah, also in Paris with his brother.
With his brother.
And whose hand had to be kissed by the children every other time when he came home from work or when he left. Stretched out. Weird family. The most...
Don't you kiss your father's hand when you come home?
Yeah, well, that's a good
I think
custom.
we'll institute that. Then your uncles, too.
In this day and age, the parents kiss the children.
Hand? Actually, oh, I see. As long as hand,
I'll be
it's not...
The breathtaking speed of the French railroads. You remember how we were panicked? But it's really gone.
I played a little, at the time, one of the last things I played with a piano teacher back in Vienna was that little Debussy piece, and I played that sort of the arabesque, or whatever it's called. Yeah, it's arabesque. In his brother's home. And I mean, I didn't seriously play it, but since it was French, particularly. He was a critic or something, an art. He was a sort of a man of some, wasn't he, in some intellectual kind of business?
House.
Yes. And then we took the train to, Trouville. It was near Deauville, but that's where Atzi was.
Exactly,
We spent
Trouville, yes. Miserable weather, it was raining. And, do you remember that big traffic cop in Paris?
Nous avons les canons aussi.
Right, and the Bosch, they'll never make it.
Right, somehow the political things came up, and he boastingly said, "We have cannons too."
We have a Maginot Line too.
The dirty Germans better not try anything. Well, I was in '38. The war, of course, started in '39, and they were overrun in '40. So, and then the sea voyage on the SS Cuba.
Was it Cuba coming back? No, that's right. On the Cuba, yeah. Going up there, and then at the pier, Uncle Rudel already waiting for us, and that's where I had my first Coke, and it had this strange medicinal flavor.
What is?
This,
What's a strange drink?
Like we must have had some similar medicine in Vienna that had this taste. And then we went out to the farm, and
the money ran out. We ate mainly bananas off the trees and sardines in big cans.
Sardines
they were
and
very
tomato
easy.
sauce.
But we bought them, this big Hudson, no? In
Yeah.
expectation, we were looking for a car.
Oh,
spending-
yeah. It was
Spending as much as $40 for a car. No, the first one
a Dodge.
was a Dodge. And did it ever work or what?
Yeah, it was. And you remember the Hawaiian-looking guy, Pete, our teacher, driving teacher and so forth. Pete, always with that smile and the gold tooth, pretty big guy.
Yeah.
And of course, to save gas, we always coasted down in neutral down the hills,
You turned the ignition off.
turned the ignition off.
Well, that's what they did in the Chivas. Chivas are little buses that when you went to the interior on one of the two main roads from the market downtown in Panama City, they would have these little buses with two benches along the sides. They're not really full buses. They were, I don't know what their equivalent.
Like a VW, only a little bit differently arranged with windows.
Yeah.
Like a little van bus.
Little van bus. And
Yeah.
they would zoom down, and you pay, what was it cost? $1.50 to go to the farm was about 22 miles, I think, into the jungle, but a nice road built by the Americans because it was not that far from the canal zone, I guess.
Yeah, I think at the end of that road there was
Some
a
military.
military installation. Yeah.
And we bought this car and together, yeah. And then the family arrived. It was always stormy scenes between the parents, and then later between father and Rudolph. So
Yeah, that was totally
He was
the big fight.
Elmer's brother.
Elmer's brother, yes. He was by then a Panamanian citizen, and he was able to get us into the country. Otherwise, we would not have had a place to go to at all.
Yeah, we thought he was the black sheep, but he saved a lot of lives. I think.
And we took along Mother, who was just before Hitler, and actually while Hitler took over, she was in Budapest in Hungary, and she came back into Hitler country by then, because her family, she could have stayed in Hungary, which was not yet under any domination of Hitler, but since her family was there, she did come back. But from her Budapest days, where she had spent months on her engagements, singing in nightclub or something, she had some very close friends, and one such whole family emigrated with us because she took them. No, wait a moment. They did come from Budapest at the time, didn't they? The woman with the two sons. What was her name? Well, the one who came then was the two brothers who Herbert and
yeah, of course.
what was the
Wilma.
Wilma
Wilma,
Deutsch.
Wilma Deutsch,
And
yeah.
I think she was from Budapest and wanted also to get out because it wasn't all that safe in Hungary. One never knew whether Hitler would go into that next. So
And our shower, you remember the shower out in the range? Of course, the barrel with the rainwater and the string.
oh yes, yes.
How would I have washed my hair?
That's right. No road.
The water wasn't very cold. Nothing was very cold. And then that's like that how it became Elvis Ranchito.
Exactly. Yeah.
L for Elsie and VI for Wilma. Yeah, that's what they called it, and they made Mother would cook some things, and actually what they made it was a sort of a hotel for assignations. I mean, not that they made it. I think it already was that.
A road
House,
yeah,
a couple
cabin.
hours of happiness.
What we used to call the Washington Boulevard cabin.
Lord.
That's your background, Jane.
Yeah, I
You ought to
used,
be
in fact,
proud of
I
it.
used one of them once.
You what?
Oh, you did?
You did
Yeah.
what?
I didn't know anything
What?
about that.
Get out of here, I believe it word.
You know that? No. Story.
Well, then you got malaria. Pretty
Yeah.
You
bad
had
case.
malaria then?
A bad case, too. Oh, your mother behaved abominably when you were sick and recovering slowly.
Really?
Uh-oh.
I
Uh-oh. We're being invaded here?
How come she
Don't remember?
no, that I don't remember.
Practically taunting you that you were crazy and didn't want to work or something. I was aghast and saying it, well, that malaria is a very debilitating illness since it takes a long time to get over it. She was very hard on me at the time.
No, I remember that Annie was terrific at that time.
Yeah. Well, yes, as a matter of fact,
Deadpan case and everything.
anything. This is all for a big TV show.
Yeah.
Nice laughing, huh? Just doesn't believe a word. No, yeah.
Shouldn't like that.
Huh?
A hardy man. Short. Slightest one of my best friends.
Yes, of course. So,
And well, we're gonna talk about the other adventures, like in the steam laundry.
well,
Yeah.
I don't have to talk about that. That's known in the family. I mean, more things that we barely remember ourselves, that we sort of, almost induce each other to remember. That's the thing.
The factotum with Rudolph, the old man that built all the cottages with him. You remember his loyal companion, Fuchsie.
Fuchsie, good.
Yeah, things come
Don't
to
you
you.
remember
I
what he-
couldn't have thought of his name.
But I don't remember what he looked like.
Little guy, gray hair. Of course, he was already with when we got there. But years before that, he and Rudolph single-handedly built all the buildings that were there.
The thing is, unfortunately, for instance, Rudolph's stories, if you remember, we arrived there and we got very close with them. It was so nice before family came.
Yeah.
He would open up and be really, it was a totally different world. And he would tell us stories of his adventures through
Absolutely.
Peru and Bolivia and you name it, and the most interesting things. I don't remember any of it. I just know
He
that
told
it was
us in
exciting.
Hainsfors, you weren't there. There was one vacation or something. In the lobby, Hainsfors, in the main hotel, he told us he started he got going on some of these stories. And he was something like a forest ranger at one point too.
Everything. He was
And
absolutely
they had the
road
fire, the jungle was on fire, and all the animals, of course, in the wild flight, like you read about, the leopards and the snakes and everything stormed. He had some fantastic adventures.
So one little thing that I remember, which of course was much more recent and not terribly long before we got there, was already on his final ranch because we were a little bit afraid and sort of asked about snakes, remember? And he warned us particularly about the little coral snakes, deadly, absolutely deadly. And he mentioned this one native who came to him and saying already with speech, lalent or something, impaired speech, saying the worm that bit him, and a few hours later he was dead. It was a little coral snake that he'd seen, or something, or maybe his hand there, got bitten, didn't pay enough attention to it. Passed. Well, you remember actually the feasts with the singing and drum beating all through the night when we were asleep? I remember they had a big festival, something,
Yeah,
in the jungle,
range.
and it went on and on through the whole night with this repetitious thing of the refrain and the beating and the singing again and the refrain.
And then they did Balboa beer garden, so-called beer garden, very nice, where we danced at night, and later was, of course, later on.
Where was it?
Well, it was, I remember, it was outdoors, on stone, and nights got so cool that you had to have at least a jacket.
Yeah.
And very good time all around, I think, getting a good job there too. Well, maybe you were already here.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't remember having done anything.
Maybe.
When we arrived there in August, actually September, September, on my birthday. I was 19 on the day we arrived. It was a long trip because you recall we stopped at about 8 different places with that steamship Cuba.
Oh, yeah.
With along Guadeloupe and Martinique and La Guaira and the place where we went up to Barranquilla, the harbor, with a beautiful city. Well, that older man gave us a ride in a taxi. Remember? Was that? Yeah, we were together.
I don't remember that, but
Cartagena, all the different.
I remember this horrible old woman with in the steaming heat in that one harbor was Guadeloupe, maybe, or something, with that meat on the stick, and she wanted to sell it, and the flies and everything. Yeah.
Wasn't it also the thing? Wasn't there this young guy who told these absolutely wild stories of his sexual things in Havana, Havana was a famous place, but I'm sure it was mainly made up. And he said he came back aboard, and everybody was drooling because he was talking about how he went into this place with a kind of a whorehouse of sorts, but fancy and with everybody.
There was this, the strong guy in the swimming pool, on the ship pool.
Yeah.
And he was from Barbados, I think. Curacao.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he stopped there too.
Yeah, he told those stories, and then the only thing is I don't remember you at that time. The old seasoned South American pioneer-like type who said, you're just nothing. If you hadn't had anything to do with a black girl, you just don't count. He was of course the biggest racist and so otherwise, but this was a matter of honor to do that. In fact, he irritated hell out of me. He was pretty much of a SOB, but he gave us all these advices what to do and so on. And then the restaurant in Panama with mother and who else? Oh, Annie's husband ran the what was his name?
The Havais. What was his first name? No. What was the restaurant? Where was
right
the restaurant?
On the main street. This little luncheon place.
Well, because that's the thing about Mother. She was absolutely a powerhouse. We didn't quite inherit. We did all right in our ways, and we're not, we made out all right. But with her, that life force whether it was there with a restaurant and doing this and doing that in New York, becoming a firm worker and seamstress, and then doing her evenings, and then doing her whatever it was done with a irresistible kind of a steamroller almost. About Uncle Richard back in Vienna. We didn't really talk more about Vienna and things. I remember relatively so little. I mean, at the end, for instance, I don't know how Heini and I used to make our night excursions into the Prater, which was also a little bit stupid because with Nazis, it was already under the Nazis.
Yeah.
And just sort of roaming around in the evening or at night. To parts of the Prater. I mean, not a big regular thing, but it had elements of danger, obviously.
Were you in on a big adventure with a girl across the street with a curtain? We just talked with Henry about that on his last visit. This Hungarian girl.
Across this?
Yeah.
Oh, directly, Chinigas.
Directly across.
I just remember things about about the curtain and looking across.
Games going on all the time.
Yeah.
And she destroyed. Well, I had a few dates with her too.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, well, she destroyed my ego totally because she said. She started laughing. And she said, you look so kindish with the little short lederhosen and but it was very intriguing with that. And Henry told me that she made some very sensuous movements while they were peeking. And I didn't know that.
What you remember about Father? First of all, he was really quite good with his business of telling from memory Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, that, yeah. I thought
Lying down and with us as little kids on the divan or the couch, and just telling stories of Sherlock Holmes, but that he compressed and described, made up all this gesprenkelte Band, which is what's the actual English name about the speckled band?
yeah.
About the one with the snake that comes along the pull thing for the bell.
And the strong man who struts into Sherlock Holmes' room and tries to impress him, and he bends the fireplace stoker into a U shape, and Dr. Watson is, of course, usual stupid ways, very much impressed with Sherlock Holmes. Says, "Ha! He thinks he's so strong," and he takes that and bends it back into the straight. Because it's always easier to bend it back because of metal fatigue.
No, I was going to say it's actually harder because it doesn't tend to bend in the same places.
No, not the same place.
No.
But he had some details which stuck with us.
Yeah. And other stories too. He was very good. Then how he painted things beautifully, because he always was very talented drawing and painting.
He made us a famous Skizzen book.
Yeah,
a book of animals, all the animals.
Animals, and also, didn't he also draw locomotives?
They're all locomotives. He
made
the coping saw.
That's really amazing, you know, when you think of him.
Black locomotive under the Christmas tree. We had Christmas trees, and he worked on that in his terribly busy office in the afternoon. Imagine this. Endless.
Well, it was a one-man, 1.5.
But the amazing thing with this non-activity that he made such a good living.
Well, because it was import-export of amounts that were large. A single operation had a fair amount of profit in it because it involved thousands of pounds of raw wool, which he bought at one kind of price and sold at another. So even if you make only relatively little per pound, it was a big thing. Remember the office equipment,
The copier press.
the copier press. And, I mean, you know, when you walk into father's office, which was of course often as a little kid, the school, the primary school, was about 5 or 6 houses down on the same side. Czerningasse and Czerninplatz. The office was am Czerninplatz and the school was am Czerninplatz. And one would walk in, and there he would be very serious face and go like this, with a great big bar thing under the screw, and under which was the plate thing that pressed down, because what he was doing is he was making copies of letters that were typed on an old Underwood typewriter. They didn't have any copy. They didn't even have, what you call it?
Carbon.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a carbon paper.
Yeah,
Didn't even have carbon paper, so you took your letter, but what was the procedure?
Oh.
What did you wet?
The wet, there was a thin tissue, and that I think you wet it, and there was a layer on top of it, and underneath was a blotter-like thing, or vice versa. But the typewritten letters would have been all right. Of course, Mr. Harand, the office manager, bookkeeper, he wrote everything by hand,
Oh, yes.
calligraphically with the purifier, and that was ink. And those you copied. And then, if you didn't have the right touch, if you made it too wet, the whole thing, of course, came out as a disaster.
But you pressed it really hard, and then you let it sit about, what, a few minutes? 10 minutes? Longer?
It was a waiting period.
Waiting
Then you
period, and then
peeled the things off.
Peeled it off, and there was your copy.
The copy. And if I had this typewriter now, I think
like a word processor, actually.
You could get a good bit of money. This was really, that was already in those days prehistoric.
Yeah. But speaking of money, you know, I mean, the one thing, I just thought of it the other day, I don't know why. The fact, for instance, that, I mean, Uncle Richard went to the gas chambers on one of these transports. He had a violin. He had it was either a Guarneri or an Amati. That violin now would, sight unseen, be worth in the vicinity of $50,000. Absolutely, no question. Because it was not many steps down from a Stradivarius, which has always been the king. And he said, that's a fine, you know, he somehow, well, these things have become virtually unaffordable, you know. So they run into the several $100,000. And he had a fine violin. Which SOB ended up with that violin? You know, we obviously had to give it to anyone. Of course, our stupidity in never following anything up.
I blackmailed this poor fellow once. I heard some sounds at night, and it wasn't his regular love, Fausta. And the next, some occasion came up, I don't know, maybe he wanted money for a movie or something like that, or he didn't do something. He aggravated me, and I said, listen, if you don't do this or that, or don't stop this or that, I'm going to tell Tante Fausta what I heard in the next room. And he practically disassembled in front of my eyes, and I still feel bad about it.
He was a weird guy.
Yeah, and then he was banished, always, and
always
so
to
that-
blow up.
so back he went into our room, 3 rooms away, and got
So you have
served
to explain this, well, how it was. Normally, the big meal was at noon. The Nachtmahl, the evening meal,
Yes.
was relatively small. And Uncle Richard, since he had his sub-apartment connected with ours, would eat with us normally as the uncle and brother of the keeper of the lord of the house. But there would always be things that would come to a boiling point between father and Uncle Richard, and sometimes mother too, who didn't like him for her own reasons or something. So he was a spendthrift, and he was a good-for-nothing, and he loved classical music, but never amounted to much, and he loved racing and to lose women. Never made any money, but only, he was part owner of the houses, which meant friction with father, because he wanted to just have money out of it and didn't want to bother with doing anything about it or something. So then, in one way or another, at some lunch or thing, there would, since there was very little other contact, it was even in normal times, the lunch. And he was also a great gourmet.
Yes.
Didn't like this food and that food. I remember vividly that he said that when it was a matter of this, there wasn't enough salt in a dish. And either father or mother told him, so put salt on it, He says, it's not the same. It has to be cooked with the salt. So then it would come to the boiling point to blow up, and he would stalk out, or he would be either way.
Yeah,
And from then on, his table would be set in our room, which was 3 rooms, the 3rd room down, the Speisezimmer, the dining room, the Herrenzimmer, the library, and this Kinderzimmer, our room, which was next to his little sub-apartment. And he would then, for weeks, sometimes months, be served. Of course, he would always get his plate. Everything would be laid out, because we had a cook and a maid, and she would set his table. He would be down there because the rooms were in a row. You would see him sit there alone at the table eating. There would be no word exchange. Later, when things got a little thawed, there would be long-range conversation until finally there's it's so ridiculous. No action comment there. And then there would be a kind of feeling, all right, well, on both parts, a kind of a distance, but okay, back in the fold until the next blow up.
Back into banishment.
But I understand. I was too young, of course. But that he brought essentially prostitutes up to his place. Is that it?
Yeah.
I know the maid was absolutely infuriated. I didn't know what it was all about because I was too young and innocent of what she had found. That she would not go in there and clean or anything, because it was pretty clear what she must have found, and that he didn't dispose of properly. Which, of course, was found in much larger numbers when I was checker in the Corozal steam laundry, where you got the military. Oh, my God. I was older, but still rather innocent. I remember also, you always had to go through pockets of things that went into the thing, and I pulled out of a pocket, because the girls, all young, nice girls would pull out, and here would be a filled object, absolutely. I filled, stuck it right in a stupid was sticking it in his pants pocket. I don't know, maybe for a joke, because he knew that it would go to, so.
Aren't you a bit chilly there?
Yeah, it was sunny before. Now it's getting chilly.
Well, if you take your shirt off, and then put it back on, you'll feel warm.
Oh, that's true.
See ya. And I remember finding in one of those pockets a story typed, neatly typed, absolutely wild.
Yeah.
And I had been,
in those days, that really had an impact.
I had no idea what it was all about. Read it with just bulging eyes. Okay, that's sort of X-rated stuff, but we don't want you to hear. I mean, it's not really for...
That's spooky.
We have it on tape, and we will not let you have it.
Ah,
So,
for blackmail purposes? Yeah, I think we ought to...
Who was it?
Archie.
What?
Archie.
It was Archie or whatever.
The one you said was muscle man who can bench press 200 pounds.
I said that? I don't even know him.
One
How
that
could I?
plays Scrabble with me and Mom and killed us.
No,
Oh, the son of...
not only...
Royal Powerful.
Oh, the TV. Oh, that should be old hat.
Well, I think maybe we'll go for the next
Wir
installment.
müssen diesmal unterbrechen.
Well, now what happens?
Doch, guter Freund, es kommt doch die Zeit heran.
Yeah.
Uncle
Okay, everybody go away from the track for a second. Mikey, I'm on track. How do you like it so far?
Moving pretty fast. Should I slow her down?
We better slow it down a little bit.
All right, coming around the curve. Okay.
This is a little dangerous territory.
Here, let me reverse it now.
Okay, out of direction. I could move.
Other direction.
It's a
Other
rail.
direction.
Rail.
Hey, Daddy.
Okay.
Here we go.
Watch out, Dad.
Here, I'll go forward now.
Okay, a little
Okay,
faster.
I'm not going to reverse it.
Okay.
Ready?
Forward.
Well, I didn't want it to go too fast because I thought otherwise it would derail when it got close to here.
Hey, we got bring it downstairs. That's where we got bring it.
Why don't you give it a little push? Gently.
Hey, Michael, you put it out. Michael, I found this and I'm thing, and then I found it over this. Put it back.
Yeah.
That's the dangerous corner. Hey, you guys.
Hey, watch out!
Careful, Dan.
Why don't you turn the train around and see if it makes that picture.
Welcome to the Long Island Railway and the little red electric engine. Here we go, coming around the far turn. In the lead, it's the red engine. There it goes again.